Yo, what is going on, guys? It's your boy AA on 220. We're bringing you guys our ICBA Week 2 game. This one is against Deebz, coach of the Calgary Flame Wheels. Now, this ended up actually being Deebz last week in the ICBA. I'm sure he'll mention it in his side, assuming he still uploads it. But he's moving on to another league, which I cannot mention the name of, but I know it because I'm in it too. I can't mention the name of it. But yeah, point is though, for those of you who didn't know, Deebz is dropping. So he will be missed. He's replaced by Garchomp the God, coach of the Lawrence Talonflames. I got to be Deeb's last opponent in this league, so it was a very fun experience as I did not fight Deebz ever before this week, as he dropped too soon in the NPL for me to actually get the chance to fight him. And not only that, but I also got a little preview of what I will be facing in MPL, as it has been announced today. I am taking over for MPL and taking over for Melantosh. Also, I know obviously I mentioned it in both my other MPL vids, but yeah, so I'll get to fight Deebz in now 2 other upcoming leagues, and I got a little taste in this one. So Deebz is a very, very scary team here, actually. His team was Aegislash, Zygarde 50%, Swampert, Mega Diancie, Breloom, Miltank, Acelgor, Alomomola, Crobat, Alolan Raticate, and Dragalge. It was a little weird of a team, but I sort of realized how scary of a matchup he actually had versus me. Now, going into my actual team for this match, my first Mon that I brought was Nidoqueen with Stealth Rock, Earthquake, Ice Beam, Sludge Wave. In my mocks, I was actually really scared of Dragalge because Dragalge ended up putting a lot of work versus my team, and especially AV Dragalge ended up chewing hits from Earth Power Nidoqueen, so I ended up changing out for Earthquake, as even with a modest nature, I still do as much as I would have with Earth Power, and that's versus a non-AV set. Obviously, with Spadef, it would end up taking more, so unless he's like Fizz Def with no Spadef investment at all, I am chances are doing more with Earthquake over Earth Power. And even if not, I'm still 2-hit killing regardless at bare minimum. So I figured that was very important to me. Also, Sludge Wave hits things such as, for example, Breloom. Well, not the best. It hits Breloom fairly okay. I felt like Sludge Wave just overall hit his team fairly okay neutrally, to the point where I kind of wanted it. And then Ice Beam is for things such as the Zygarde and the Crobat. Shucca Berry is that way then I could take a hit from the Zygarde, or even the Swampert if I need to get up my rocks, as Swampert could very well lead and get up rocks versus me. Or also Earth Power Mega Diancie. That's another thing that I could just Earthquake and guarantee Oko. So overall, I very much like Shucca Berry this week. It helps with a lot of potential Nidoqueen answers. Next up, oh wait, I forgot to click on Citra. Alright, next up, we have God Tier, our Metagross. With a Naive Nature, I brought Grass Knot, Bullet Punch, Earthquake, and Ice Punch. Bullet Punch, Earthquake, Ice Punch hits pretty much everything on his team fairly well, besides the Alomomola, which is why I have Grass Knot, as Alomomola can't really just constantly switch in on this. It'll take enough damage to the point where I will at least whittle it down, especially if I can keep up rocks. So, unless he's like Rindo Berry, which he actually, spoiler alert, is Rindo Berry, so that was a very clean tech, but he didn't actually bring it for Metagross, he brought it for Ludicolo. So that was a good way for me to clear the Rindo Berry as well, but I'll get into that more so in the game. Overall, though, this just hits his team so fucking well. Also, Grass Knot is another option for Swampert as well, as Swampert would chew any other hits from this. Next up, I have Taco Tuesday, our Ludicolo with a Life Orb this week. I have Ice Beam, Surf, Giga Drain, and Hydro Pump. As long as I don't get Toxic, I put in a lot of work with this set if Rain is up. I can still potentially lose against things such as Miracle, Alomomola, or Acelgor if it's running enough speed to speed hurt me. It would probably need to be Scarf or Unburden to outspeed me, but he does have ways around it. Also, if Zygarde gets set up, that's another thing, and then also Shadow Sneak, Aegislash. So he definitely does have ways to chip me, but overall, this team doesn't have great switch-ins besides potentially, as I said, AV Dragalge or Alomomola, assuming it's not taking a Giga Drain, because Giga Drain would still do a fuck ton to that. But AV Dragalge is like his best option around this. And even then, Ice Beam still does a fair amount with the modest Life Orb. So Ludicolo is just going to put in a lot of work this week, I feel like. Next up, I have Kingdra's Bay, our Pelipper, which is mainly just here to set Rain and then do decent offensively. I have a Bold Nature to take hits better from things such as Breloom or also Diamond Storm, Mega Diancie. I have Surf, Ice Beam, Hurricane as my offensive moves. It hits its team fairly well. Even Swampert doesn't really take a Surf well with the Rain up. So overall, it just hits his team fairly well. Sadly, I wasn't able to fit Toxic on this week, as I wanted a way to be able to guarantee a KO Breloom and still have a way to damage the Zygarde fairly well. So I needed both of those moves. and Roost is just that way that I don't get whittled down really easily by rocks and then other mons that are outspeeding me. So yeah, that's really all there is to Kingdra's Bay this week. Next up, I have Toasted Corn Hour Zapdos with Heat Wave, Volt Switch, Defog, and Roost. I almost brought HP Ice in this set, however, I wanted a way to be able to reliably hit Aegis Slash, so I brought Heat Wave instead, as Volt Switch wouldn't have really done that much, and I figured that he might try and switch an Aegis Slash, predicting I'm a Toxic Zapdos, as Toxic Zapdos is fairly well against a lot of his team, and if I had gotten a Toxic off, it would have done fairly nice. However, between the Miltank being a Cleric option, I felt like also Crobat and Dragalge could always switch in on a Toxic, though Dragalge would be the more likely switch in, as Crobat would not really want to switch in on a Volt Switch potentially, or Aegis Slash walling me out had I not brought Heat Wave. I figured that was very much a reason to bring Heat Wave over Toxic, and I didn't bring HP Ice for the Zygarde, as I can still burn Zygarde with Heat Wave, so that was my philosophy, and I really needed Defog on something, though in hindsight, I probably should have brought HP Ice versus what he had brought in his team this week. And finally, I bring Gogurt the Goodra with an Expert Belt. I almost actually brought AV to potentially take hits from Dragalge better. However, I felt like Expert Belt and just doing a lot of chip with physical Goodra does a lot this week in terms of offensive, and then Toxic always helps stall things such as Lomomola. This is also my Toxic Mon this week, which is why I didn't bring it on Zapdos. I have Earthquake, Power Up, and Outrage as offensive moves. Hits his team really fucking well. I can actually take hits from Mega Dancey as well and kill that off with Earthquake, which is really nice. Earthquake also hits the Aegis Slash fairly well, should I need it to. Outrage is really nice for taking on the Zygarde, and then Power Up is an option to hit Alomomola, so that way then I'm not missing Thunders. And also because with the Sap Sipper, if I come on Breloom, for example, I get the +1, and then now I'm hitting everything a lot harder in general than I would have with just a special Goodra. And also, this team's a lot more special bulky, and I need an Earthquake anyway for Dragalge or Outrage. The point is, I need at least one of them, and I figured I might as well just commit instead of running a minus speed nature and getting outsped by things such as Breloom, which could always just have already set up an SD, or even like a sub-punch set Breloom with a little bit of speed. Had I run a minus speed nature, it could have been a very problematic set. So yeah, that is my team this week. I just want to make sure I didn't go a little under far. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the game. So as you can see here, he brings the Acelgor, the Dragalge, the Crobat, Alomomola, the Alolan Raticate, and the Zygarde 50%. I was a little surprised by no Miltank to an extent, because it was probably his best rocker in this game, I felt like. However, he still does have spikes with the Acelgor, so he definitely does at least have hazards. But with two flying mons, I figured it was really weird that he went with the spikes route rather than rocks. But it's not my decision to judge Deebz' team this week, as it still does look like he can put in a lot of work. Alolan Raticate surprised me a little bit until I realized that I don't actually have great switch-ins to it, and then I sort of started to realize that it made a lot of sense this week actually, as it's going to come down to me missing, well, me dodging his Hustle mons, because Hustle Sucker Punch can do a lot to my team. Also, Hustle Double Edge, really my only mon that's going to take that well is my Mega Metagross. So I sort of realized how scary that Alolan Raticate could potentially be. And it definitely ended up making a lot more sense once I started to look back at my team in the game, as it came in the game and then started doing a lot of work. So overall this week, I am just very scared of Zygarde potentially setting up on my team as well, as my team does not have great switch-ins to a Zygarde once it gets set up. I do have ways around it, however, before getting set up, but after it gets set up, it is a scary mod. So I lead off with my Nidoqueen, of course. I figured I can get up rocks early game, and I figured that he was probably going to lead off with this Acelgor and potentially either U-turn out or get up spikes, and then maybe even Final Gambit. So he actually does end up going for the U-turn on my Nidoqueen, which is perfectly fine, as I take it very, very well. It does almost non-existent damage. And I also find out that he's Life Orb, which is very good to know early on in terms of damage rolls, as I know that he is at the very least Life Orb boosted. Whereas with the spec set, it's a little harder to tell, as just depending on rolls, I guess, if he was running, let's say, a Modest Nature and then max special attack with a plate versus just specs with little investment, that could be something that differentiates. But anyway, since I do get on my rocks, I figured I didn't want to sack Nidoqueen just yet, as it could be very useful for the Zygarde potentially before it gets set up. So I go into my Toasted Corn here as my best way around this Raticate, I guess. I don't really take that very well in terms of the Double Edge. However, I do find that he's Life Orb, and he's also taking Double Edge recoil. So I could potentially Roost here, because if he goes for the Sucker Punch, I get HP back for free. And if he goes for the Double Edge, I'm just whittling him down. Well, I do almost certainly lose my Zapdos in this 1v1 matchup. I can at the very least chip him to the point where I can get him in Heat Wave range or even Volt Switch on him. So I do almost certainly lose my Zapdos at this point, but it's fine, as I can have Zapdos be a sack later on in the game, or potentially roost up on something such as Mola. He does end up actually going for the Sucker Punch and misses, which is very, very unfortunate for him. I do get off my Volt Switch, however, which is very nice. As I said, I can always roost up on Mola, for example, later on. So the low HP, while this thing could potentially also be a sack, isn't the biggest detriment. However, it will most likely end up being a sack. He does bring in his Mola here, though, as I bring in my Nidoqueen. Very nice play, as he can take pretty much any hit from me as he wants. I decided I'm going to go for a Sludge Wave, as I want to try and potentially poison this thing. And I want to just see what he goes for, because maybe he goes for a Wish and tries to pass, which he ends up actually doing. Maybe he overpredicts and goes for a Knockoff, which is fine, as that would be... I could take it Knockoff fairly well. He does go for a Wish here, which means that he's probably going to Protect or go for a Toxic and read me. So I go into Zapdos here, take this opportunity, because next turn I can always just go for a Roost. He goes for a Scald actually here, and he does almost no damage at all. He does 30 damage and does not get the burn, which does mean we are able to live this hit, get some leftovers recovery off, and then just roost up next turn, as there's no way he's going to stay in. I figured that he would potentially go into Dragalge or Zygarde. He actually does go into Dragalge. Dragalge, I figured maybe just because he'd chew an HP Ice fairly well with Dragalge, and if I had read that right and went for the HP Ice, Zygarde would have taken a lot of damage early game. So that was very smart of my opponent, of course, to brought in the Dragalge here, as it can take any hit that it wants, and then something is going to get nuked. So I, of course, here cannot stay in, as I cannot touch him, and he would just kill me off with the Draco anyway. So I hard swap. I don't know why I didn't Volt Switch, but I hard swapped into God Tier my Metagross. I figured that I can definitely take 2 Dracos once I Mega Evolve. The first one's going to do a lot more damage than I would have liked, not gonna lie, but I still do take it nonetheless. And I could potentially just click an Earthquake here, or even just go for a Grass Knot, reading the Mola coming in, as there is no reason he should stay in, as that Draco did non-existent damage, and I'm going to get a decent Spadef buff when I Mega Evolve. He does, of course, here bring in his Mola. I know he's not Leftovers. I don't know what set he is, but I end up finding out, as I mentioned on my team builder, he's actually Rindoberry. But at the time, I didn't know what set he was. I just knew it wasn't Leftovers, which was very weird to me, but it definitely gave off a berry vibe. Now, I wasn't sure if that was Rindo or potentially a Wakanberry for Thunder Punch Metagross. He does end up actually proving to be Rindoberry here, and he takes the Grass Knot fairly well. I guess that was probably a low roll even after the berry, as I end up doing a lot more damage later on with other grass options, so I figured that he's probably not very specially defensive invested. So I bring in my Ludicolo here, predicting that he would probably go for something like a Scald, for example, or even just a Wish, and I knew that that would do non-existent damage. He did 6 damage with his Scald, which is fine. So here he brings in his Dragalge, perfectly fine by me, as I knew that Dragalge was probably his best switch into this, and I just go for an Ice Beam, because if he brings in this or Zygarde or Crobat, they're all taking decent damage from Ice Beam, and if he stayed in, then next turn I just go for a Giga Drain, knowing that he's probably going to stay in. So he does actually switch out here and makes a double into his Crobat. This is most likely his intended sack, as he should definitely know that he's not going to take an Ice Beam very well at all if he even somehow lived. And of course, this Crobat does go down perfectly fine. Dragalge, as I mentioned earlier in the game, does a lot to my team still offensively, so it definitely makes sense that he was saving that. He brings in his Acelgor here, which definitely I cannot stay in on, as he could always just U-turn on me and do a fair amount of damage and just get some nice chip off. So from here, I decide I'm going to go into the Kingdra and get up some Rain, as I know unless if he is somehow going to pop an Unburden here with maybe a normal gem Quick Attack, for example, or even a potential Berry that he's trying to get a Weakness Berry off with, that I can always just outspeed this unless if it's one of those two things. He does get up his Spikes here, probably reading that I would switch, which was very smart on my opponent's part. And then he goes for the HP Electric here, which I know it's HP Electric because it O-code. I figured that maybe, in fact, yeah, there's no way that should have O-code if he was like HP Rock, for example, so it had to have been HP Electric. So I do bring in my Ludicolo here, as I know with the Rain I can outspeed him. I know he's not Scarfed, obviously, because the Life Orb he took that turn, and also first turn with U-turn. So I know I'm perfectly fine to just bring this thing in and potentially just go for really whatever I want. I go for the Hydro Pump, as I figured Rain boosted, he doesn't have great switch instead, even though Momola would take a fair amount of damage. However, I do miss. That's fine, because I am free to just go for an Ice Beam on the Kingdra. It didn't really hurt me at all going for Hydro Pump that turn, because Zygarde's going to take a lot from it in the Rain. Even though Momola would take a fair amount from the Rain, boosting it, and also because I'm modest with Life Orb. He does, however, bring in his Alomomola here, and he's going to take some nice rocks damage, which is always very nice, just having something take rocks damage. At this point, I thought it was game, and I just clicked Giga Drain, and I figured I could just sweep. However, he does just barely live our Giga Drain, which leads me to believe he has some sort of def investment, as he took that fairly well for a modest Life Orb Ludicolo dealing damage. And he clicks Mirror Coat and kills me off. So that was a very good tech on Deeb's part, as it does ultimately stop a Ludicolo from sweeping through his entire team. I do bring in Gogurt here, however, as I figured that the only things he has left are Selgor, Zygarde, and Alomomola. And I figured he was going to probably try and get some regen boost up, which is perfectly fine. I kind of misplay here, however, and instead of just clicking Outrage, I actually go for a Toxic, which was definitely a misplay, as if I clicked Outrage, it would have stopped him from getting to set up at all with Zygarde, and Alomomola, for example, couldn't have done any chip on me with potentially Toxic, and also it means that his Selgor just gets off free damage on whatever I switch in, which ends up being the Metagross. I decide I'm going to sack the Metagross, or if he didn't go for a Bug Buzz here, which he actually ends up doing, and instead went for a, let's say, Spike, for example, then I can always just Bullet Punch and kill off the Selgor next turn, and then Ice Punch the Zygarde and Grass Knot the Alomomola for game. I should have ultimately sacked Goodra, as he couldn't have brought in the Zygarde had I just went for an Outrage and then just started setting up. So it would have definitely limited him a lot more, but overall sacking Metagross is just very stupid there, as now I not only sacked Metagross, but I'm now letting my Zapdos take some nice damage. And he does end up sacking here, of course, and I was really stupid and I didn't click Roost there. I don't know why I didn't click Roost, as his Selgor definitely went down. There was no reason for him to keep it alive at this point, as it went down to rocks. He has no way to clear hazards, and Alomomola wasn't a switch in there. So I don't know why I didn't just click Roost. In hindsight, that was very bad. And now I'm sort of in a pickle, because Zygarde can set up on me for free. I sort of have to click Heat Wave and hope I can burn. If I can burn the Zygarde, then I can definitely win. However, he does get up a Dragon Dance here. And at this point, I feel like my fate is sealed. I know there's almost no way around his Zygarde potentially sweeping me. So switching out of Goodra and not just clicking Outrage was definitely a misplay. Also sacking Metagross was definitely a misplay, as had I sacked Goodra to the Selgor, or even really anything else to the Selgor, I could have potentially just brought in Mega Metagross and then cleaned before the Zygarde got set up, as unless if he was Yache Berry, for example, there was no way around me just clicking Ice Punch. And even if I did, well, even if he did have a Yache Berry, he could only get to +1, whereas now he's at +2 and certainly kills through anything on my team. So he does here go for the Dragonium Z, and this is definitely a Z Outrage, as Zygarde doesn't get any other physical dragon moves that I am aware of besides Dragon Tail, which there's no real reason to run a Z Dragon Tail. If he ran it somehow, then that's great for him, but I'm almost certain he clicked Outrage here. So, well, Outrage next turn, that is. He, of course, is going to kill with the +2 Z Outrage, though. There's no doubt about that. He would have probably killed with just regular Outrage. So here I do bring in Send Bob's my Nidoqueen. I know at this point it's game, because when he's at +2, he's essentially just killing me off anyways if I didn't have my berry. Plus Outrage is just going to kill me off anyway, which is fine had he for some reason not brought 1,000 Arrows. Which maybe he didn't, which would kind of make sense if he brought, like, let's say Outrage, E-Speed, Coil, Dragon Dance, as I do have fairly okay ground resist. So that might have been his set, and in that case, then Outrage would just nuke through everything. Now it would make more sense why I didn't just click 1,000 Arrows on my Zapdos. Point is, though, his Outrage does end up just cleaning up the game, and I have no more Mons left, and I do end up losing this game 2-0. As I said, I shouldn't have switched out of Goodra. Goodra definitely won at this point in the game, and I could have literally just clicked Outrage, as even if he was physically off defensive Alomomola, and he just confused me off, I could always then hard swap into Zapdos, and just Volt Switch on Alomomola. Had he brought in the Zygarde there, then maybe he would have ended up winning the game regardless. But overall, it was a lot safer to just stay in with the Goodra and just click Outrage. So, very good game to Deebz, of course. If you guys enjoyed this, leave a like down below. Check out Deebz along with the rest of the current coaches. Garchomp the God, as I said, he is going to be replacing Deebz as of next week. His link will be updated as of next week's video. And without further ado, I will see you guys next time in ICBA Week 3. We fight up against Max Rapture. I forget his team name off the top of my head. I think it's the Tasmanian Toxicroaks. I know it's something with Toxicroak, though. But point is, I will see you guys for that game. Peace out.